So, a 6-year-old student at an elementary school in Virginia shot his teacher during an art portion of their class. And the teacher is alive, but still in the hospital, still in a critical condition, getting taken care of. I don't know if I'm using that term appropriately, but still under the care of the medical team at the hospital that she's being overseen at, is what I'm trying to say. And this is a story that is already, of course, outraging people, rightfully so. And it's one of those kind of situations where a lot of people are not understanding or knowing where to throw the blame or how to resolve the issue. Of course, the 6-year-old child can only be held responsible for his actions to a certain degree. We need to find out who it was who enabled him to procure the weapon, whether it be, if it's his parents, they need to go to prison. And of course, obviously they can't be trusted to be in charge of the child. If it was somebody, in the area, like if it wasn't the parents and they didn't know, then I don't think that they should be held responsible for that. But I find that highly unlikely that it happened in that way. If the kid, and when I say didn't know and they didn't, it wasn't given from them, let me be clear about what I mean. What I mean is that if somehow magically between being dropped off at school and the shooting incident, the child was handed a gun from somebody randomly, on or off of school premises, then that is horrifying and we need to find out what happened. But the more likely scenario is that this kid came to school with the weapon. Was that from inside of the home? We don't know yet. I'm sure we'll find out hopefully soon who the weapon actually belonged to. But it either came from the home, meaning a parent, a sibling potentially had it around, or somebody maybe outside who the child is allowed to be around, and somehow, whether in his backpack or on his person, this child was managed to get the gun to the school. I don't know if the parents are dropping the child off every day or if this kid rides the bus. Maybe there was somebody who brought a gun to the bus stop. There's a lot of different scenarios into this. And the reason I'm throwing so many different scenarios into this is because, of course, people are already making it about race. And maybe I can admit that there is potentially a racial component to the story. The child, from what we know, was black. We haven't seen an image of that child because, of course, they're not going to show that, but they have shown an image of the parent of the child. So it's safe to assume that the parent and the child share the same race. And of course, the teacher, they've shared her identity. This is from what we know, Caucasian woman. And a lot of people online are going to make it about that. And I'm not going to say that it's not about that. Maybe there is a racial component to it. Not to say, black people are inherently more violent because of their race, but there is a larger propensity for violence from the black community. So that's something that will have to be addressed by saying, why did this child have access to a weapon? We know that for some reason, in impoverished areas, weapons are somehow infinitely more readily accessible to people who wouldn't be legally allowed to purchase them otherwise. That's the racial component that I'm talking about, because I said impoverished areas, but impoverished areas are inhabited by a larger percentage of minorities, I guess you could call them, or other ethnicities besides Caucasian people at a higher rate than them. So when something like gun violence disproportionately affects these areas, it in turn disproportionately affects the races that inhabit that area, and usually would involve or be perpetrated by people who also live in that area. Because imagine somebody driving from a nice, well off part of town to go to a raggedy part of town in order to cause issues. Even the black people aren't doing that, meaning even the black people who live in the wealthy area are not the ones coming back over there. But unfortunately, because there are a disproportionate amount of black people in lower income, impoverished areas, then they are subject to and perpetrators of incidents at a higher frequency. There's no emotion in that whatsoever. I'm not trying to say, and that's why they're all bad people, and I'm not trying to say, and that's why they should be allowed to have, cookies for dinner or whatever. It's just a fact. It's a sober fact. So we do with that what we will. Without going into assumptions about the child and his household and his upbringing, we all know there's something disturbing about a child of 6 years old deliberately shooting his teacher. What has the boy been taught? What is the boy seeing? What is he around? Why did he have access to the weapon? These are all things that are hopefully going to be answered soon. But of course, the overarching theme and moral of this story is to please, please, please pay attention to your children and make sure that you are watching them and what they are involved in. Check their backpack before they go to school. I'm not gonna lie to you. I used to keep pot in my backpack, and maybe if my mom checked my backpack before school, I wouldn't have had weed as a child. Maybe I still would have. There are very many places to get it from. But I say all this to say that you should be involved in your child's life. I never had a gun in my backpack, by the way. Maybe a knife or two, but never a gun. And not on some weird, I wasn't like that kid, but, like a protection type of thing, and because knives are cool. But that's not encouragement to carry weapons on you, children. If you're watching this video that is clearly marked for adults, not adults only, but not for children. And I can go on about this subject forever, but please pay attention to your children, man. That's scary, man. That's not just scary for the teachers. That's scary for everybody who sends their children to school. Like, dude, if one of my child's pupils pulls out a gun, like, are you kidding me? The school will never hear the end of it from me. How do you comfortably, as a parent, allow your kid to go to that same school the next day where a 6-year-old had a gun, man? It's unthinkable. The Uvalde situation, I hate to bring that cursing name up again, is one thing where some stranger, wanders onto the school and does these horrendous, unthinkable things. But when it's a child, when it's that age, like 6 years old, it's unthinkable to say. And then we have to think about how are we going to deal with this kid moving forward. Kid's ruining his life before he even knows what a life is truly. And, he's going to be one who is going to have to get a second chance. A 6-year-old child, what are we going to do that with some heavy rehabilitation? Who's going to be the one to deliver it to him? Obviously not the foster system. The foster system produces more people like this than it rehabilitates, unfortunately. Therapists, maybe, hopefully, because we know it's not going to be the government. Where is this kid going to go to? That is why we must maintain our posts and take care of our responsibilities as citizens, humans, parents, so that we can prevent and mitigate these kind of situations from happening in the first place. It's the only answer. Once it gets to this point in the story, it's not very easy to discuss how we are going to move forward. So minimizing these types of situations is the ultimate goal. I would like for you to have a great rest of your morning.